Welcome to the Planet Ready podcast, where we bring preparedness to where people are. You see, it doesn't matter who you are or where you live. Everyone faces unique risks and vulnerabilities to their future. Our job is to make sure you're prepared for any situation, whether it's a man-made hazard, a natural disaster, or even assuring your finances are in order. On this podcast, we get exclusive insights and inside stories from disaster survivors, world leaders, and experts from diverse backgrounds and fields of study. The conversations that we'll have focus on reaching the 99%. That includes families, friends, and even our neighbors, and especially those who haven't thought twice about readiness. Don't miss out on a single episode. We're bringing you everything you need to prepare yourself and your loved ones. So without further ado, let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planet Ready podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Spin Global, a public benefit corporation that exists to disrupt disasters from neighborhoods to nations. I'm your host, Alwyn Sheriff. This week on the Planet Ready podcast, we'd like to introduce you to our special guest, Martin Alperen, who's going to share his story to inspire and encourage our listeners to get #ready for it. You see, in this episode, we're going to learn more about Martin's background and what he took from his run-in experience from a disaster and how this fueled his passion for Homeland Security law and in helping others better understand it to make for a safer community around the globe. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest. Martin Alperen has been a practicing law and trial attorney since 1985. He has a master's degree in Homeland Security from the Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security. He's the author of Foundations of Homeland Security, Law and Policy, the second edition, and it's a great reference book for Homeland Security laws all in one place and organized by subject. We're so happy to finally have him on. How are you doing today, Martin?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So here's your first question, Martin. So can you tell us a little bit more about a disaster that impacted your life and what you took from that experience?
Sure. The earliest I can recollect is my grandmother made us take shovel and sand in the car when we drove from Maine to Massachusetts a long time ago. And the road we took was called the superhighway. It was such a long time ago.
Wow.
And so my grandmother's preparedness, we didn't have any accidents, but I learned to be prepared from her. 9/11 was, of course, a focusing thing. It changed everyone's life. But most recently, COVID-19 has moved me because I want people to understand that Homeland Security is based upon laws. Mm-hmm. Laws are the foundation of Homeland Security. So that's my goal these days, is to get people to understand Homeland Security laws.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how would you say it's impacted your life moving forward? I mean, regards to you mentioning Homeland Security law earlier, how did that thrust you into that field of study? And how do you feel like it's impacted your life so far?
Well, along with Natalie Enclade and Joel Thomas, I too am obnoxious about preparedness. It was very nice to hear them say that.
There we go.
Because
I was waiting for you to say it. I was waiting for him to say it, everybody.
Back in after 9/11, all the information that came to the government was we are going to get attacked. Terrorism was an ongoing, evolving, and continuous threat. It was not if, but when. And we listened to things like the 7 signs of terrorism that are in the link I gave you, and 8 signs of terrorism, depending on which state you live in. So preparation was the way to save people's lives. It's easy to do, and I think it's fun, actually. And a dual use is my favorite thing. For example, the lunch my grandmother made us take in the car, so in case we got in an accident, we'd have something to eat. It has dual use. I ate it myself anyway. So that's one of my favorite things about Homeland Security's laws, is that they help people all over the place. So I also want to make a distinction.
Yeah, sure.
The Homeland Security laws that I'm talking about are 100% mitigation, preparedness, and response. They are there to help us. Nothing to do with border security. After 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security was set up to defend against terrorism. And I can't do anything about terrorism, but I can certainly help with the mitigation, response, and recovery laws, which is what I'm trying to do.
I recall us actually having a conversation not too long ago behind the scenes about you making a distinction between Homeland Security law and border security. And if you'd like to just briefly expand upon it for our
Oh,
audience, you can
absolutely.
take some time now.
Yes. Um, Pictures of men and women wearing the jacket that says Homeland Security at the border, corralling people, has done more damage to Homeland Security than anything I can possibly imagine. Back in 9/11, back when the Homeland Security Department was being formed, there was a great debate about whether to include FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, within DHS. I'm not aware of any conflict about whether to include what's now called ICE in the Department of Homeland Security. And I think that is a continuing disaster, and it hurts us all kinds of ways. Some people are so offended by that, they won't tell us anything. They won't talk to us about something suspicious because they're offended and afraid what they see on the television about border security. That's it.
Wow. Wow. It's certainly a very it's certainly a very interesting discussion. It's like there's so many, I feel like it's very intricate. I feel like there's a lot of detail surrounding it that not a lot of people may know about. And so it makes kind of border security a very, very long and drawn out and lengthy discussion. And there's just so much involved. So it's very hard to really find any, it's kind of hard to grasp it, you know, and trying to find your footing in the discussion. And
Well,
for me, it's just been a really hard, it's just been a really hard subject for me to grasp and really be able to formulate my own opinion on.
when I first started this journey, I lived on the island of St. John in the Virgin Islands. And there were regularly people coming to the shore of the island from other countries. We would find their wallets, we see their clothing. I'd see them walking down the street on the hills. And I was very concerned about this because at the time, and I still do think terrorists are using the same mechanisms to get into the country that drug couriers are using and have used, and people sneaking into the country for other reasons. So it was a concern, but I wish that the ICE people did not wear jackets that Homeland Security on when they're doing things that other people don't like. It's okay to recognize it's part of the Homeland Security stuff because terrorists may come in along the same routes as drug smugglers and people smugglers, but it diminishes. It makes it so difficult for some people to want to even talk to us. Sometimes I mention the word Homeland Security and people get scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So going back to your experience earlier, because I want to touch on this just a little bit more. So how exactly did your experience with that disaster that you mentioned earlier, how did it inspire you to get communities prepared moving forward?
Well, at the time I was involved with what's called St. John Rescue. It was a 20-person volunteer rescue squad on St. John, where there really wasn't anything else. There were 2 EMTs who worked in one ambulance, and it could take an hour to get from one end of the island to the other. So we needed to have other resources. And I was very motivated, and St. John Rescue got very motivated. I became a ham radio operator. Everybody became a ham radio operator. The members of the ham radio group all became first responders with St. John Rescue. So the inspiration was contagious, and I have a wonderful example. St. John Rescue hosted the first ever Caribbean region vehicle extrication and building stabilization seminar. All that means is if you get in a car accident, you want to make sure the car doesn't fall over on you while you're trying to rescue the people. And if there's a hurricane, which we have in the Caribbean, you want to know how to stabilize a structure so you can go in and rescue people. Mm-hmm. So 60 people from 6 different countries came to St. John, some of them having never been off their island in their entire life. And what was inspirational was every single person, all they had to do was get there. The entire island of St. John provided housing, food, transportation to and from various venues, and the rescue squads on St. Thomas and St. Croix helped us get the people to St. John. The taxi drivers took them for nothing from the airport to St. John. So This was an inspiration that just grew.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's stories like that that inspire me a lot, because I tend to think a lot about how people might not consider the role of the community at large, that it shouldn't just be on one particular group or one particular agency. Like a lot of people can come together and be involved in order to solve various issues and to prepare their communities at large. So it's hearing something like that really, it inspires me, and it makes me think a lot about how I can help my community come together in some way, shape, form, or fashion, to continue getting people involved and more prepared for the future. So,
yes. And one thing it's important is that this is a two-way street. Lots of things are two-way streets. I have an obligation to have some first aid equipment and water so I can drink for a couple of days. It isn't just up to the government to give me water when there's a catastrophe. There's a joke from a long time ago. Where's my FEMA water? FEMA and hurricanes and so forth brings tons and tons of water. But what if it isn't there? So I should have some of my own. So that's what I mean by a two-way street. Plus, in the area of Homeland Security, police can't do this all themselves. We are the eyes and ears of the police. There are, I think, 800,000 police officers in the United States, sworn law enforcement officers. There's 300 million people. Those people can see things often before the police see them. So sometimes people say first responders are the first there. That's not true. Civilians are the first responders, but they don't have a uniform. So police, fire, rescue may be the first uniform responders, but the first ones going to the scene are going to be your neighbors or the person behind you in the car.
Wow. So let's go back to your book real quick, because I think I want to explore that just a little bit more. How do you think that everyday people can utilize the knowledge from your book and use it to prepare for disasters?
Well, the book is organized by subject. So every law related to preparedness and response and resilience is in one of two chapters called Preparedness, Response, and Resilience. And they're just so much that I really couldn't decide how to put them in one chapter or the other. But you can read the laws. These are all organized by subject. So you can see all the laws related to preparedness in the chapter. And you can see the words are in English. They mean what they say. So you can see what should have happened, what's supposed to happen because of the laws. And I find that particularly meaningful. I have an example.
Yes.
There's something called HSPD 5. I don't want to bore everybody with initials, but it stands for Homeland Security Presidential Directive 5 from 2004. It mandated that every first responder have something called ICS or NIMS training. All that ICS and NIMS are organizational methods to coordinate disasters when they start off small, like a forest fire with only 100 people working, and they grow big to a forest fire that has 5,000 people working. So all that NIMS and ICS are a way to organize disaster response. And the government said, your community, your group is not going to get any Homeland Security preparedness funding unless everybody in there has ICS and NIMS training. Well, it turns out that almost every responder in the country has ICS and NIMS training now. And in fact, it's almost all around the Western world. And I can give you an example of something. There's this law, HSPD 5. I read the words and I saw the policy this law was supposed to create. And then as a first responder, I actually felt the first street level reach of these laws. I had to take NIMS and ICS classes. And NIMS and ICS classes are why people can work together from different agencies. And as an example of that, the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, a horrible thing, and definitely Boston was prepared. But one of the ways that the entire metropolitan Boston area was able to work together and coordinate was because every one of them had NIMS and ICS training. So for example, I used to be a cop a long time ago when the word help was coordinated with 1099. I never yelled 1099. I just said help or backup. So the thing about that is 1099 may be the correct word for help where I work, but in another jurisdiction, it means like I need to go to the bathroom. So one of the things about NIMS and ICS is common language, no 10 codes, as we say. So if someone says, I need help, they know that in any language and whatever department they're in. So this is one of the wonderful things about ICS and NIMS and how a law became a policy and became something that I could see and feel as a first responder.
So for like the everyday person who's probably looking at your book and they're looking at all these different laws that were created in order to help understand to help first responders understand what they're supposed to be doing in situations like that, and to understand what the government can do in order to better put these laws into practice. It kind of helps give them that general sense of what we should be doing and what we should be focusing on, and so they can take that information to the right people. Correct?
Yes, yes. Now, the rest of the book talks about things that we're supposed to do. This chapter on ICS and NIMS isn't really about what we're supposed to do. It's how I tell you what to do when you tell me what needs to be done. It isn't necessarily I need to do something. It's the fact that I can coordinate with you, and whether you come from one department and I come from another department 500 miles away, we can work together.
Yeah,
That's
that
what's most important
helps
about
things
that.
run more smoothly.
Yes, run more smoothly, absolutely. In
Yes.
fact, the 9/11 Commission, one of the most important findings of the 9/11 Commission was the importance of cooperation and be able to coordinate individual responders. Because in 9/11, one department couldn't talk to the other department and buildings were falling down around them. That was a problem.
I see. So then this might actually already answer a bit of my next question then, because the next question I want to pose to you is, what kind of innovation do you think is needed in order to reduce the risk and mobile preparedness in neighborhoods across the nation?
I think we don't need innovation in terms of a physical tool or something like that. We need innovation in terms of thinking. I made some notes. Let me just look at them. Okay, one part of thinking is to instill what's called a culture of preparedness. So along with planning to go to the beach, I think, well, I of course need sunscreen and a towel, but there's a storm over there, so maybe I should bring an umbrella. And it's a very bad storm, so maybe I should bring some extra food. That's a bad example, but culture of preparedness. So people think about preparedness along with whatever else they're doing. I already said that I believe Homeland Security is a two-way street. And there's a picture I hope that people will get to see of what I call bomb detectors. It's from the London Underground in 2003-4, and it shows two eyes, and it calls them bomb detectors. And to me, that means that the people are the ones that are going to see the bombs long before the police see the bombs, and that it's a cooperative arrangement. So I see the bomb, I tell you. If you see something, say something. And about preparedness, I believe it's intrinsically related to thinking. Here's an example. Let's say that where I live has lots of power failures and we need generators. So I'm going to ask you, why do we need generators? You say, because the power goes out. Then I say, why does the power go out? You say, because the high wind blows the lines off the tower. I can't do anything about the high winds. But if I now know that's the problem, then there are four options. We can bury the power lines. We can build another or a stronger tower. We can have another route that doesn't have the power lines go through that dangerous area, or we can reduce consumption so we don't even need the power. So these are all options that come out from emergency management, and I say thinking. You think about this stuff, you end up, well, we can't do anything about the wind, but I can take care of what the wind does. Joel Thomas had a chainsaw preparedness army he talked about in one of the videos. That's a great example of what we call jurisdictional hazards. And I live in the city. We don't have 100-year-old trees in front of my house, maybe pipes, but not trees. So it's a jurisdictional hazard, and we don't need anybody to tell Joel how to handle this. He organized people, they're trained, they have proper equipment. So that's a great jurisdictional hazard that they've taken care of. I've already spoken about dual use. So this came up to me mostly right after 9/11. Companies, places like, well, Washington, D.C. is a good example. They had caches, C-A-C-H-E, of radios, handheld radios. They had them all, 300 of them, 1,000 of them, all over the city, buried or in special locations. So responders from different agencies could talk to each other, because that was a problem. It still is a problem, but it was more of a problem way back then. So the radios that would help with terrorism would also help if there's other kind of catastrophe, explosion at an industrial facility, for example. So that's it for my thinking of, we need to change the way we think about things. And in fact, there's a wonderful chapter in my book about Homeland Security thinking. Because sometimes you can simplify it by saying that thinking that got us into this problem is not going to get us out of it. So thinking is important.
And definitely as a part of that thinking is just helping people understand how important it is and why it's important to think that particular way. I think that's definitely a puzzle piece that's missing. I mean, even with the content that, I create from Planet Ready from time to time, I'm trying to find different, interesting, creative ways to instill that cultural preparedness in the youth every single day to get them thinking about why this is so important and why we should be taking so much time to think about it, because these are people's lives are at stake, people's livelihoods at stake. Lots of things are at stake when it comes to these disasters. So I definitely agree with I definitely agree with the fact that, thinking is, a critical part of the conversation.
And you mentioned the word, well, I heard the word fun. I think it's fun. I happen to love flashlights. I have 12 of them. And radios, I like radios, all kinds of little gadgets, but even if you don't like radios. I forgot what I was saying. Give me a minute. It'll come back to me in a minute. I apologize.
It's fine. It's fine. Because I actually wanted to go ahead and pivot to this last question.
I recall. I recall what it was.
Oh.
There's a video I made and I gave you a link about it. It's called Mask Clash. It's less than 2 minutes long. It's funny. It's funny because I'm not good at this stuff, but I made it because it was absolutely necessary. I think the government should have done this. Mask wearing should have been fun. We could have had mask contests. And so my little thing is about a 2-minute mask clash when your mask doesn't go with your outfit. Anyway, that's it. That's what I wanted to say.
I actually really like that video. I'm going to put that in the description.
Okay, great.
Well, let's go ahead and go to our last question. So given our current moment in society with the pandemic that's still at play and the seasonal hazards rearing their heads, what final thoughts would you like to offer to our listeners?
Well, of course, regarding the pandemic, there's the routine hand washing and vaccines, booster shots. There's the physical distancing, which I never like them called the social distancing because we need social nearness. So my primary thing is that people need to make eye contact, say hello to each other, and be kind. Mm-hmm. There's not a single case of transmission of COVID by glance. So I think it's very important to be nice to people.
Less COVID is shooting out of people's eyes.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes the best preparedness is not to need your preparedness.
Mm.
That means like sometimes the best part of valor is not going into the fight. So you can live to fight another day.
Uh-huh.
So no reason to drive down that highway during the blizzard when you can wait a while, go later on when it's safer.
Yeah, definitely. That's another cool way to think about it. Shoot. Okay. All right. Well, shoot. Now that we're done with the interview, let's go ahead and go to the best part of the podcast.
Yeah, best part to you.
I hope you're ready, man. I hope you're ready. Because right now we're going to go ahead and pivot into the Planet Ready trivia segment.
All right.
Now, this is we're going to give you the opportunity to answer some questions. In this part of the podcast, we're going to go ahead and try to test your knowledge on basically on your field. And we're going to give you the opportunity to answer some of these questions. Now, if you get it right, that's good on you. But if you get it wrong, well, you get the chance to convince our audience otherwise. That's the best way I can. That's the best way I can put it. But yeah, this is an opportunity to put our guest in the hot seat. So for everybody listening in right now, get ready for this man right now.
Watch me sweat.
All right, you ready to play?
Yes.
All right, let's get into it. So the very first question is, so what event in the U.S. set the state for Homeland Security law?
Oh, that's not so difficult to me. For me, it's 9/11. There have always been laws related to helping people, but after 9/11, there were a whole lot more, and they've sort of focused on a specific thing. So that was it. 9/11 and laws related to hundreds of laws were written after 9/11, all to protect us. So that's my answer.
I can actually really see the significance of that event too. I mean, actually, according to the answer to this question, some people would say the Boston Marathon bomber, which is what I was literally just going to say to you. But that's actually really debatable. So we could actually, sit here back and forth and have a conversation about that, because I believe that some viewers, on the podcast would actually very much agree with you. So that's actually a really good answer. But shoot, we'll just leave that one for the audience to discuss in the comment section. Let's go ahead and go on to the next question. Shoot. So what did the Homeland Security Act of 2002 do?
It created the Department of Homeland Security. the Transportation Security Administration, and a few other things. DHS, by the way, was the largest reshuffling of American government since the 1950s. 180,000 plus people were reorganized and something like 50 agencies. And another thing which isn't really well organized or known is that Homeland Security existed, some of it, in different places, and there were hundreds of subcommittee hearings and financial, to do anything was very difficult. Sorry, I'll turn that off. Okay, thank you.
That's correct. You're blowing these out of the water, making them, like I didn't know you were gonna come. I didn't know you were gonna come with the answers like this. That's correct. Shoot, I have no quarrels whatsoever.
Is that the only? That's it. You're not gonna stump me.
I wish I could, but you're attacking these really easily. I mean, as you should be. Shoot, you don't have anything to worry about. You have complete. You have complete control over this thing. So. No arguments whatsoever. You got it. Awesome job. Awesome job. All right, here's the last one. The last one. Maybe this one might stump you. How do you define a person suspected of engaging in terrorism-related activities, but without any ties to terrorism?
How do I identify them?
Mm-hmm. How do you define that individual? It's a term.
What's the term?
You got to answer.
Well, I don't know whether calling them a terrorist is the right thing yet. I am a prosecutor. You got to do something to be guilty of the crime. Although preparations count too. So I have another thing. Back in the day, there was impetus not to have people in wheelchairs have to go through security clearance at airports. There's a difference of opinion on this, but Al-Qaeda, at the time, Al-Qaeda was certainly capable of finding little old ladies in wheelchairs. So it didn't make any sense to me to do that. But I have one other thing I want to sneak in, even though it's not the right time. There's a saying, if you see something, say something. Mm-hmm. But that only is valid if the people who see something are willing to say something. Mm. So police-community relations are fundamental to policing, of course, but they're also fundamental to Homeland Security. As I said earlier, there's only 800,000 police officers, but there's 300 million people. So we need them to cooperate. They have to feel comfortable talking to us, which is one reason why Border Patrol agents wearing Homeland Security jackets is harmful to us.
You know, I would have loved to have been sitting next to you in class if we were in school, because you would have been that one student schooling the teacher after you got your test results back. I would have been like, all right, yeah, Martin. Shoot, the answer to that question was lone wolf, but I'm sure like that there could have been like so many ways around that and trying to figure out ways in which that individual could have been defined, and the way you just laid it out made perfect sense. So again, I have no quarrels.
Thank you.
Awesome job today. Awesome job. Thank you so much for playing. I know it's not easy, but the challenge to taking on this game show is it's always open to people. So
forgetting for
having the confidence and the courage to come on and be able to take some of these questions on, man.
So for getting all my questions right, can I get a Planet Ready t-shirt?
Oh, I just might give you mine. And I might have to try and earn it back, later on by doing these questions myself. Shoot, because you really killed it.
All right, good.
Awesome job. Awesome job. Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. It was very you offered a lot of interesting thought points today. You offered a lot of information I feel like our audience very much learned from. And shoot, maybe we'll get to have the chance to have you back on.
I'd be interested in doing this again. And I have a good segment I've already done about pandemic laws. Wow. I'm giving a presentation in February to some doctors about pandemic law. And when I was asked to do it, I have already know what I'm going to say. So if you ever want to talk about pandemic laws, I have a good story about them.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, that's it for this episode, everyone. We want to give a special thanks to our guest for joining us today. And if you'd like to find out more about Martin, you can visit his LinkedIn at Martin Alperen or martin@alperenlaw.com. And don't forget to check out planetready.com, a premier online disaster risk reduction and emergency preparedness platform for individuals, families, houses of worship, businesses, and governments, where we bring disaster preparedness to where people are. I also want to give a special thanks to our audience for tuning in today, because these episodes would not be possible without you. So we want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. But in the meantime, we hope you get ready for it. You've been listening to the Planet Ready podcast, proudly brought to you by Spin Global, a public benefit corporation that exists to disrupt disasters from neighborhoods to nations. Do you have questions or a topic you'd like us to explore? You can reach us at podcast@spinglobal.org. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Planet Ready by Spin Global. Don't forget to visit planetready.com and prepare yourself and your community on the world's premier online disaster risk reduction and emergency preparedness platform.